what used to happen so far is humans were the main consumers of this stack. And now what's happening is you now also have machines consuming it directly, right? So
Right.
humans stop being the only consumers, agents consume the stack also, and then they push decision making. So an agent might hit the warehouse, compute a KPI, compare it to its sort of like learn normal and baseline, and then it pushes summary to Slack or Teams.
Hey, my name is John Santaferraro, and this is the Digital Analyst, where AI makes sense and digital dominance begins.
The Digital Analyst with John Santaferraro, powered by Insight Jam.
We live in a modern age where real-time data has become the currency of artificial intelligence. Time matters more than ever. Urgency drives decisions. Immediate responses to thousands of transactions and events are now common. The world has changed. It used to be enough to capture data daily and load it into a data store overnight. Not anymore. It used to be enough to ask a data analyst for information and wait 3 days or 3 weeks for an answer. Not anymore. It used to be enough to have information gradually trickle up to senior executives so they could make monthly decisions and adjustments. Not anymore. The world has changed. The mantra is simply now. Digital business moves at a pace that has outpaced the old way of doing things. People need intelligence now, not tomorrow, not later this afternoon. Decisions need to be made in real time or near real time to meet moment-by-moment shifts in market momentum and customer behavior. But it's not just people. The biggest consumers of intelligence are fast becoming applications, mobile apps, devices, and machines. These are consumers that need a continual flow of insight. All of this, of course, will be compounded massively when we start deploying thousands or even hundreds of thousands of AI agents, all hungry for both the event triggers that alter the course of action and the insight that helps them act in the right direction. So how timely that we are now seeing an influx of new agentic analytics platforms that use AI agents to automatically onboard new data, to immediately detect anomalies and assess root cause, and instantly discover and deliver insight wherever it is needed. These are agents that are always on 24/7, able to handle thousands of insights per second, and always ready to respond in real time or near real time. It's for that reason I am excited to welcome Bhaskar Sunkara to today's episode of The Digital Analyst. Bhaskar is the CEO of Bicycle AI, and you will want to hear about how he took what he learned from decoding signals from complex application environments at AppDynamics to building an agentic analytics platform for real-time insight with context. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee and join me on my Tuscan farm here in the hills between Lucca and Florence for the Digital Analyst. A big digital welcome to Bhaskar Sunkara. It is so good to have you on the Digital Analyst.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Yeah. It's really fun to be having this conversation because you and I started talking about real-time context-aware analytics years ago. I think it was at least 4 years ago. And it was before all of this AI craze happened. I would love to have you jump in because you've been in the center of it. You have been like doing it and in the center of it for all of this time. Tell the listeners a little bit, what is real-time insight with context and why is it so rare and what's happening with it today?
Yeah, absolutely, John. I mean, it's funny, right? Like real-time insight with context, it does sound very reasonable. It sounds like a reasonable ask, but under the hood, it's a tough problem, right? And if you break it down, if you break it down into a couple of parts, real-time is actually not the hard part. You can stream events. This CDC, warehouses update really quick right now. So that's almost like a solved problem. But the problem that uh, really sort of gets in the way is context, right? Because if you take real examples, think about when something's moving in data. So you have drops in conversion, you have dips in approvals, your refunds are spiking. You then immediately hit three things, right? Number one, the data is very fragmented. Everybody talks about data, so let me just really go into what actually really happens, right? So the payments team will have one view, the marketing team will have another view, and the product will have, another view. None of them line up cleanly, and none of them really agree on what a customer is, what an order is. So, all that stuff. So that's number one. Second, if you really think about how tooling has been and how tooling has really worked, we've historically separated detection from understanding, right? So you can have, dashboarding tools, dashboarding platforms. You'll basically look at them and you're like, hey, conversion has dropped or latency is up. If you're looking at monitoring tools, for instance, but they don't really tell you if it's because of a change in ads. Is it an inventory issue? Is it a payment provider? Is it seasonality? So what really happens is people drown in alerts and stop trusting them. So that's the second problem. Um, and then it's the last bit. So let's just say you figured out what happened. You figured out why it's really happening. There's almost no connection to who should do something about this right now, right? It's not really like operations, right? So by the time the right merchandiser, the right payments owner hears about it, it's already too late. So really the full loop, do you see it? Do you understand it? Can you route it to the right person? Can you act on it? That's what makes it so hard to practice, because there's so many elements. And so what you really end up with is, tons of alerts nobody trusts, or no alerts, and then you're basically doing a postmortem, the next morning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems
Yeah.
like this becomes even more critical as we move further into the AI world.
Yeah.
Generative AI doesn't have the ability to find data to do analytics. I mean, it's not even in its bailiwick. It can't do it. And then we move to agentic, where you have, in especially what you just talked about in the marketing process, and even marketing to sales. There are all these potential AI agent capabilities that agents do, and now you're doing large numbers of transactions per second with probabilistic kinds of
Yeah.
of decisions being made by an agent, and you don't have in that AI the ability to go back and get real-time context aware insight.
No, absolutely. I think, what really happens is, unless you've built agents specifically for saying, hey, I own this KPI, I'm going to watch this KPI, and I'm going to then sort of like look at why it's moving, when you notice it's moving, and then complete the loop of see it, understand it, route it and act on it. It's really hard to build the right system. And you really have to approach it that way.
I get the problem, right? It's like
Yeah.
we've lived in a world where streaming data tools and event-based tools are a completely different set than data collections, and data warehouses are becoming more real time, but they're still not event-based.
Yeah.
And so these, I mean, historically, these technologies have lived separately. So what does it take? What does it look like to get it right, to actually do
Yeah, yeah,
this?
yeah. I think that's the right question. That's the right framing to start with, John, before you go deeper. So if I really summarize it, if I have to put it in one line on what does sort of like getting it right look like, what does good look like? The answer is, you don't get a chart, you get a decision ready brief, right? And I'll actually take an example and probably break it down. So imagine again, going back to like a payments example, which again serves as a good proxy for all transactional kind of businesses. Instead of saying, hey, there's a chart which tells you approval rate is down, right? Everybody knows that. Instead of that, you get something like what changed, which is approval is basically down 7 points, right? Where is it happening? It's happening, let's say, cross border. It's happening when cards are not present. It's happening at a specific issuer. things like that. When did it start? Right after a gateway change, right? How much does it matter? Like this X amount of revenue at risk in the next hour. You have to be able to quantify it. What to do next? You can read out traffic, you can open an incident, you can notify the issuer. They can be one or multiple sort of aspects. And then it actually goes to the person who can actually act, right? It's not going to a generic channel. That's when it's real time with context and it's actionable. And the bar to set on something like this is that, can someone take action in 60 seconds without really opening a dashboard? Because if you say conversion is down, it's useless, but its conversion is down on a certain version of a browser, let's say, iOS Safari, only for a certain page, like a collection page, after sort of like a particular deploy, and it's costing us so and so. Now you've got something. So basically, data has to tell you that, not a customer, not an executive. That's when you're starting to get it right.
Basically, I think we agree that in order to move forward with real-time context-aware analytics, you have to separate, first of all, the AI and the agentic from the
Hmm.
data. So there
Yeah.
has to be a layer of agentic analytics or autonomous analytics that sits in that does all of that work of getting context, of understanding the the events as they occur and breaking it down to be able to, in that moment, provide the insight
Yeah.
is needed. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the evolution of what has happened to make all of this possible?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I could maybe break it down into a couple parts, John. One is like just the evolution from dashboards to where we are with agents, and then what I can do is then talk about like what has to happen before stuff works, and like how do these sort of like organize it, right? So we just start really quickly with just the evolution. Like, how do you go from dashboards to agents, and like what's the sort of like transition and what's really happening? So if you look back, right, dashboards are basically, here are the numbers, good luck. Keep watching them for patterns, keep watching them for changes, and then figure out what happens. Then we really added self-service. So self-service dashboards, which is, hey, I can make a dashboard myself. Maybe I can do it conversationally, and now everyone can build their own dashboards or sort of like chat with it. And then what that leads you to is to be confused in more personalized ways, right? And then the the data science teams are a part of it. They have their models, but a lot of them start becoming like one-off projects. So what's new with agents, like if you leave all that behind, is basically ownership, right? An agent is not a chart. Basically, an agent is saying, this KPI, this journey, this slice of the business, this is my job, right? I'm going to watch it continuously. I'm going to tell you when something's off. And as soon as something's off, it could be good or bad. I'll dig for likely causes, and I'll propose or trigger actions. And, there obviously the ground rules on when to propose, when to trigger actions. And so the shift is from tools that present data to systems that take responsibility for a chunk of your operations. And that's the mental jump. Can you start thinking about analytics as operations versus reporting? Like that's the main mental jump. So if that makes sense, let me know if you have any questions on that. Like I can go into uh, you know, what needs to be done to create this sort of like foundation for the agents to work on it. But hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I think the part that might still be unclear is how do agentic analytics work themselves? Because that's the
Yeah.
piece. RAG is not enough to get
Hmm.
context
Yeah.
for AI, right? And,
Yeah.
and so you have to have this layer. What makes up that autonomous analytic agent or that agentic analytic
Yeah.
agent?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So again, two parts to it, right? Like number one is, what is the foundation? Like this is sort of like the unsexy part in some sense, but without the foundation, agents can't really do much, right? So in the foundation, I would say there's about three things at a minimum. Number one, like a clean, call it an event stream, call it like, reliable events. But what that means is when you're looking at your bookings, orders, payments, whatever your actions, in the business are, whatever your verbs are, they need to be structured, they need to be time stamped, right? So you can either have, like, the best case scenario is like you have them all, in Snowflake, in BigQuery, etc., or they're just coming in from through Kafka, or Kinesis, and they're super clean and they're organized pretty well. But if your core events, you have to sort of like merge multiple CSVs. You need to get a PDF export from SaaS tools. That's where the struggle could be. So number one, a clean event stream, or just sort of like reliable events, right? Especially for transactional businesses. It does apply to broadly to everything else also, but let's just start there. So number two is common definitions, right? Like, what is an order? What what is revenue? What is a decline reason when you're applying it to payments, etc. So everyone needs to agree what an order is, what a failed payment is, what a route is, what a skew is. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the agent's going to find an anomaly in one of the definitions, and then the finance team or whatever team is basically consuming it will actually get back to you saying, hey, what version of revenue is that, or what version of, like, whatever we set up is that. So common definitions is the second one. And then the third and the most important thing is, you have to have latency in the system that basically matches the decisions, right? If you want to intervene in the hour, the data can't come in tomorrow, the report can't come in tomorrow, the tech can't come in tomorrow. If your warehouse is updated only once a day, you can't pretend you're doing real-time operations. So near real-time where it matters, batch where it doesn't, because what agents cannot do is they cannot fix bad modeling magically, right? An agent is only gonna amplify what's underneath. It's not gonna fix it. So this is part one, John, and then I can go into what does the analytics agent actually do all day on top of it. But I just wanted to pause after part one.
Mesh is a material built to be strong and flexible. Mesh is an interaction creating alignment and power. Mesh is a behavior that brings people together. And now Mesh is a new model of trust networks from Insight Jam, driven by enterprise experts for professional decision makers who recognize the moment we are in, where the world of work collides with AI. The greatest mesh of all.
I mean, it sounds like step one is like there's a lot of work that has to be done on the data itself. This is not just it really is not just plug in, but a lot of that is being automated as well, correct?
It is. So it's almost like you start with, like, what do you really want to do? What is the core use case? Like, are you going about after, like, approvals and declines and stuff like that? Are you going about optimizing interchange rates? Are you going for like cart abandonment? Are you going for like conversion drops? So it really starts with what is the core use case, because it's not about, hey, throw a bunch of data and then pull up charts, because it has to be targeted. It has to be use case driven. It's like I was saying, the agent needs to own a part of operations. And so if you design it that way, I think what's really happening is, especially using AI, especially using LLMs, you can create a lot of those common definitions. You can create a lot of that modeling on which, agents can really, really work well.
Well, I've heard you talk about this, about the automation of onboarding and even some of the agent creation. Can you, I mean, I think our listeners want to hear that. Can you talk about how you do that and how that's done?
Yeah, absolutely. So think about it this way. So instead of like, so let's say you have your underlying data, and it can be messy, it can be clean. So you can have one source, everything in Snowflake, everything in Kafka. You can have multiple sources. You can have like a CDP, you can have Kafka, you can have, errors going to log files, etc., etc. So could be super messy, could be super clean. What you really need to build from it is a very clean, call it a data model, call it an ontology. And what that means is, if you need to really connect, a signal in a data to the decision, that it basically, can result in, you need to wire up all the pieces together into a common definition and a common ontology, where you're like, hey, here's raw data. Let me create an ontology, which is, here are the events, here are the dimensions, here are the customer journeys that go through it, here are the important customer cohorts. And once you wire all of that stuff up together, and also KPIs, obviously, KPIs are very central, whether you're doing like events, whether you're looking at journeys. So once you have that core layer, you can then start looking for patterns on top of it, right? What KPI is moving? What is it a part of? Like, is it a part of a cohort? Is it a part of a journey, etc.? And once you have that, then you connect it with like, what are the potential causes that can cause this, right? And again, agents are really good at like really coming up with like the core causes, and then each cause can then be tied to an action, right? So this is the going back to see it, understand it, route it, act on it sort of loop.
Yes.
You are
Yes.
constructing an ontology for that loop. Once you really like populate that ontology with raw data, you're not working with raw data and doing federated queries anymore, but you're just working with that core data model, which is so much richer and gives you so much more context. And that's really how you populate it. And then yeah, I can go deeper into sort of like what is the agent going to do, all day, but that's sort of like the foundation and how you automatically sort of like build it.
And go for it. Go for it. I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
hear it.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so going back to again, what does an agent do all day? It's obviously not a chat window, right? It is an always on analyst. Like it's a 24/7, analyst. And if you follow around a good analytics agent, what does it do? Number one, it wakes up every few seconds or minutes and asks, did any of the KPIs or journeys I care about move in a meaningful way? So it could be, did approvals drop in France, for example? That could be the question. And not just raw values, but normalized for seasonality, campaigns, holidays, like all of that type of stuff, right? Like, so you're not you're not trying to find like super, super shallow signals, but deep signals where you've already looked at, accounting for seasonality, campaigns, and everything else. Number two, when it finds something, it doesn't stop at, hey, this dropped or this spiked, right? It then starts pulling slices. This is what a typical analyst would do. And this is where scaling becomes a problem because every organization has a number of these analysts who are basically looking at a signal and then starting to pull slices. And so the agent then starts pulling slices by country, by device, by payment method, by merchant, to really see where the deviation is basically concentrated, right? That's the second part. The third part is it builds out like a hypothesis tree, right? So it looks like it's localized to a so-and-so sort of sector, like it's cross-border. Is it maybe it's new customers, maybe it's one payment gateway, started right after this config change. So all of this is something that it's doing, which is already, so much better than like a generic anomaly alert. And the last one is it decides on, is this just interesting? Is it also urgent? And then based on that, it can do one of two things. It can say, hey, let me just send a summary to a human, or let me kick off like an automated playbook in some cases. So it's more like a junior analyst who never gets tired, obsessively focused on one area of the business. And then eventually it produces like a short, like here's what changed, here's likely why, and who should act brief. And this last step, which is the routing plus the clarity, is basically the highest value that the agent does. But that's in short what it's doing basically all day.
Wow. It's amazing to me that all this is being automated now, the onboarding
Yeah.
of the data, some of the creation of the business models, the actual KPIs, and then you have these agents that can do the work of 10 or 20, I don't know how many agents,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
and you don't have to pay them, right? You pay for them, but they're
Should pay
worth
for
it.
a trip, yeah.
They're
Yeah,
worth it compared to what you would
absolutely.
be paying for that number of analysts who could never respond in real time and be available 24/7. I mean, those things are not even possible. And I love the fact that you've moved beyond just rule-based kinds of things to more probabilistic, and they're searching for the
Yeah.
why,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
anomalies, root
absolutely.
cause analysis.
Yeah.
All of that is so far beyond anything that you could do on a dashboard.
Yeah. I mean, like what's funny is that the worst thing you could do to an agent is to exactly tell it what to do, right? Like, because it just defeats the purpose of like why you created an agent in the first place. Because It's just supposed to understand, you give it sort of access to the, to the MCP layer with all the sources. It has memory and everything else, and it then figures out what to do. And if you basically just wire up a workflow and so think of it as an agent, then that's not getting it done, because things change a lot. And you have to keep sort of evolving the system, add exceptions to it, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, that's sort of like directionally where it's moving.
So I'm curious then, if so much of this is now automated and agentic in platforms like Bicycle, um, who does the setup? Is it really that easy? You push a button. What does that look like? The whole setup and operation of it. Can business people do some of it? How are they involved with technical teams? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question, and I think that's really kind of evolving, as we speak. The keepers of data are still like the data and the analytics teams. And so what they do is they own the data, they own the pipelines, they own the quality of it. They make sure that whatever data represents sort of like the core transactions of the business, they are basically, all sort of like accurate, and all of the sort of accuracy around it. But I think what's kind of really happening is the data teams are starting to get empowered so that they can really hand over self-serve analytics, including analysis, to business folks, right? So business folks, so the mental framework I have in terms of how a business user can really approach it is there are really three types of insights, right? Like there's either like tactical insights where they're in the moment, you're like, hey, I need to know about this right now, right? That's one. The second is more strategic, so you're looking at like weekly, quarterly, monthly type of insights, and you're like, how do I change course for better revenue, for better sort of like business next week, next month, next quarter, right? So that's more strategic. And the third one is ad hoc, which is you're pulling up dashboards, or obviously you're chatting, you're getting questions, right? The first two are really like push insights where they come to you, and the last one is like pull insights. So I think what's going to happen is the data and analytics teams will be empowered to set up things in a way where business can then consume based on these three modes. And really that's what's going to happen.
So what about the impact then? I mean, we've spent the last decade at least putting in the modern data stack, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Modernizing business intelligence. I mean, the latest BI platforms, right, are now becoming agentic. Some of them are quite agentic, but
yeah,
so what happens to this? Does this
yeah,
blow it all up, or what's the
yeah.
impact?
I think that's actually a great question, and that's one of the most important ones. In my view, what happens to the overall stack, like call it like the modern data stack, ETL tools, BI dashboards, teams around them, et cetera, et cetera. In my view, they become the substrate, right? Because the warehouse is still where the truth lives. The ETL or ELT, depending on what you're using, still cleans and shapes things. So that is sort
Yeah.
of like important, and that is really key. And again, there's a place for BI tools. They're still great for exploration, storytelling, things like that. We can talk sort of deeper into just that part of it. But what changes is, what used to happen so far is humans were the main consumers of this stack, right? And now what's happening is you now also have machines consuming it directly, right? So
Right.
humans stop being the only consumers. Agents consume the stack also, and then they push decision making. So an agent might hit the warehouse, compute a KPI, compare it to its sort of like learn normal and baseline, and then it pushes summary to Slack or Teams, which is very,
Mm.
very different from traditionally open looker and click through 10 filters, which was the main consumption sort of aspect of what used to happen, right? So I don't think the BI tool or the modern data stack. Like I definitely worry less about, is my BI tool obsolete, but I would think more about, here's the key question, right? Like I would think more about, is my data model coherent enough that an agent can understand it without a PhD sitting next to it? That's
Right.
when you're gonna give the agent the power to sort of like rip through it, own pieces, and then do the loop, see it, understand it, route it, and act on it.
Unlock better leads with custom webinars by Solutions Review.
And welcome to the Solution Spotlight featuring Broadcom, Alteryx, IBM, Impetus, Infor, Sigma, Radware, Infinidat, Revenera.
Boost your brand with our exclusive virtual events featuring in-depth use cases, live product demos, and interactive Q&A sessions. All broadcast live to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Zoom. Straight from our state-of-the-art production studio or on location at industry tech conferences. Get the full package, custom promotional graphics, polished video production, and our massive social media reach. Fill your sales funnel with high-quality targeted leads and contact us today by visiting solutionsreview.com/virtual events.
It's really amazing because what just came to my mind is this idea that you have real-time events now flowing in. The context is there, so you have real-time context-aware analytics, and in real time, you can do what human analysts can't power, make probabilistic decisions to power applications and devices, but agents can now be making decisions and impacting what happens in a device. I think of the edge, right? The Internet of Things, and what's happening in complex systems, where the edge is kind of on fire and alive with its own sensors and everything, plus applications and apps and mobile and all of that. I mean, an agent can do that. You couldn't do that before. So it starts with real time and it feeds real time.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And also the fact there is that the amount of possibilities when you're looking at a signal and analyzing what needs to be done and the decision making and the number of causes associated with it, there's simply way too many factors, right? Which are just impossible for a human to sort of like grab their arms around and say, hey, I'm gonna actually look at like all of these as an analyst and then come up with like what's the right choice. After sort of like assuming that they're making the right cuts, the right merchant, the right geo, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where there's opportunity for like really the agentic part to really translate and consume on top of the modern data stack, but become sort of like operators on top of it.
It's amazing how fast this is going. So for our listeners, they're sitting there going, "Wait a minute! I just modernized my data stack. I have been trying to modernize my business intelligence. What do you recommend? How should they be responding to the modernization of the modern data stack?"
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, super super important question because on the surface, it just looks very intimidating. And so like, how do you basically start, right? Like, if you're head of data or you're a CDO, like what's like a sane first step? Like, think about it that way. And without starting to think about, oh, do I have to blow up what, everything that works? And you don't have to, because of the substrate, obviously the BI stack, the modern BI stack is a substrate. But what I would do is, my advice would be to start painfully small, right? So just pick one revenue critical area. So think about checkout conversion, payment approvals, and even that for a particular market, or like order cancellations or something. Don't try to agentify the whole thing. Don't try to agentify the whole business. And so once you pick a small one revenue critical area, then I think the question is, can we give an agent the data and the context it needs to own this one KPI or journey end to end, right? So this is some of the steps that I mentioned before. And then can it sit on top of it and detect issues, explain them, and propose actions? Then what you're doing is pick one KPI. Once you pick the revenue critical area, pick one KPI that matters. Pick one owner, pick one playbook, right? Run the agent in parallel with your current processes for a few weeks, right? Because keep your existing dashboards and processes, everything that you're doing, and run the agent in parallel. See if it catches things earlier, explains things better. Is it reducing the manual back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the way I would say, I would start, versus like, oh, what is this sort of like giant AI transformation thing for my data analysis and agentic sort of agentifying the whole thing? I feel like that's sort of like too much to chew on, to begin with.
I'm going to throw you a question out of left field, just because now I'm curious.
Yeah.
How in the world did you envision all of this? Or has it sort of morphed over time? But I know when we talked 3 or 4 years ago, you were already way ahead
Yeah.
of the market. But what has gone on in your mind? I'm
Yeah.
curious, how did you do this? This is really
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. No, so I think, for me, I'd go back to sort of like my previous journey at AppDynamics, where we spent so much time looking at technical signals, right? Like for, IT ops people, for app ops people, and trying to go from like technical signals to basically, action. Like, why did it happen? And so eventually taking action on it. To me, nothing of that sort existed for business signals, right? So all of the business signals that I mentioned or I talked about, there's no way to go from that to sort of like, action and to like, why is it actually happening? Because both the technical factors, both, and the business factors contribute to all of this working together. And there's no system that actually kind of does that. So to me, it was like maybe the starting point was that, and then the how is basically, the agents sort of like modernizing, and then sort of like creating common definitions and then working on top of it. And then the agentic stuff is really sort of comes so fast to address so many of these things. And as soon as you put like a machine consumer on top of the data stack, I think that just showed the way of like how to do it.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing. So, since you have continually been ahead of the market, skating to where the market's going, not just waiting, where is all this going 3 to 5 years from now? I don't know if we can predict that far out, but
Yeah.
what is it? It's more agentic, it's multi-agent orchestration, multi-agent systems. Are we
Yeah.
anywhere near causal AI? I mean, I have an opinion on all this too, but I'd love to
Yeah.
hear what you think.
Yeah, I feel like, I'll start I'll start sort of more basic. And I feel like if you look at just 3 to 5 years, I think the big shift is that fewer people start their day in a dashboard. I feel like let's just start there, right? Because I've seen customers still resistant to, not yet shifting to an agent and still working with a dashboard, because it's something they trust, and it's something that's easy for them to kind of just follow, even if it doesn't sort of like interpret. They almost want to look at something where it's not interpreting. That gives them sort of like more peace of mind, just because that's what they're used to. But it's also because, the tech, the AI has to mature, right? Really give them the trust, right? And so that's what I see happening. There'll be kind of more trust, so which means the fewer people start their day in a dashboard. Instead, they start their day with a short brief, which is, here are the 3 things that moved yesterday. Here's why, we think the move. Here's what we already did. Here's where, we need sort of like consensus, we need discussion, etc. And whether it's operations teams, whether it's product teams, whether it's marketing teams, all of those teams, all of those roles will spend less time hunting for problems and more time deciding trade-offs, right? Like, it's sort of like, do we accept this risk for that upside? Do we push this promotion harder? What do we do with this flow, right? If 5 years from now, if your best people are still manually stitching, CSVs or data streams or pipelines to understand what happened last week, because that's still the status quo, that would not be that great, right? That would mean that we would have basically failed on that aspect. So less hunting, more steering, more decision making, versus just figuring out sort of like, data and the various problems, etc., that come with it.
Wow, it'll be fascinating. I can't wait to see what happens, especially when we have all the data on what every agent is doing
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
well,
Absolutely.
24 hours a day and hundreds or thousands or millions of agents. Bhaskar, thank you so much for joining me on the Digital Analyst. I love the way that you explain things. I mean, I think every marketer, every e-commerce person, everybody with events
Yeah.
needs this kind of technology. So thank you
Yeah.
for helping us understand it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, John. And thanks for having me. And anytime.
We'll
Thanks.
see you again sometime. Thank you for joining the Digital Analyst. If you enjoyed today's content, do me a favor and like and subscribe to the InsideJam.com YouTube channel below. You're going to find hundreds, almost 1,000 videos there, great content on AI, and you may as well join the million members and subscribers of that channel. If you want to contact me, do me a favor, let's connect on LinkedIn. Let's continue this conversation. And if you want more information from Bhaskar, connect with him on LinkedIn or check out bicycle.ai. It's not often we have somebody like him with such a deep understanding of business and marketing and e-commerce and retail and technology as well. You'll enjoy that connection. I can guarantee that. I'll see you again in a couple of weeks at the Digital Analyst.
Powered by Insight Jam.